Hello everybody, this is Kyle, kmlphoto.com. So in this episode, I've set up a time lapse in my kitchen. It's a particularly bright corner of my kitchen, but there's no direct sunlight. And what I decided to do was just scoop out a dish of ice cream and take a time lapse of the ice cream melting. The way I've got this set up is I've got my Sony A7 III. No need to use the A7R III for this type of work. With my 24 to 70 G Master lens, top down view in daylight, with indirect daylight, I should say. And I've got it set up to take an image every 10 seconds for 500 images. And I've got the camera set on manual, so it's f10 at 1/10 of a second. The reason I've chosen manual exposure over aperture priority or program mode is to try to avoid flicker as much as possible. Flicker is a condition that happens when there are minute changes in your exposure from one picture to another. When you stitch all of the individual pictures together in Lightroom or other post-production software, you'll produce an effect that's very much like a strobe effect, and it's very subtle, but it is noticeable and quite difficult to watch. All right, checking in on the melting here. It's been about 45 minutes, and melting is clearly underway. Hoping that this all levels out and just kind of turns to mush over the time remaining. Let's go back up over here. Um, Let's see what it looks like in the final version. All right, so it looks like the ice cream has just about completely melted, which is convenient because the camera is done with the time lapse. We're going to take the raw images into production. We're going to load them into Lightroom, do some post-processing on them, and you will see the final result. Okay, so I have all 500 images imported into Lightroom here, and I've gotten most of the image captured properly in camera, but I have to make a few changes. First thing I need to do is change the aspect ratio to 16:9. That's the standard video aspect ratio, so I'm going to do that. Next thing I'm going to do is change some of the develop settings, move the highlights down slightly, move the shadows up a little bit. Going to change the whites, change the blacks very slightly, just trying to bring out some extra detail in the image. I like a lot of texture and clarity in my images, so I'm adding some texture and clarity and a little bit of vibrance to make those rose petals and the berries pop a bit. Then it's just a matter of setting white balance, and I'm setting it to shade because we were indoors out of direct sunlight. And then I'm just going to go through a process of looking for individual blemishes. And I see I've got one little crumb that I left on the marble that I wanted to get rid of. So I'm just cloning that out using the Lightroom heal tool and taking one last look at the image. I have it the way I want it. Now I just go all the way to the very end of the film strip and synchronize all of my settings. and it'll take the edits that I made in the first image and just cast it all the way through the 500 image set that I have. Now there's a couple of ways to create the final video. I like to export all of my files into JPEGs into a separate folder, and then use Cyberlink Power Director to create the final video. It's possible to do all of the work in Lightroom. I've just never been comfortable with that process, and I have Cyberlink Power Director for my videos, so I just use that tool. Okay, we are over in Cyberlink Power Director. The first thing I'm going to do is import my media folder. And this is the 500 images that I exported out of Lightroom. Takes a second for that to load into the media window on the left, upper left side of the screen. Once that's done, all I have to do is select all of those images and drag them down into track one of um, the work area. Once that process is done importing, it's simply a matter of highlighting the images that have been imported in track one. After the import is complete, I simply go to Slideshow, click on Slideshow, choose the time lapse feature, and click Next. Depending on the speed of your computer, takes a few minutes to render this section of the workflow, but basically it's built a skeleton of the video. Just going to simply click Produce, and it'll take me over to the Produce module. Once we get to the Produce module, we have a choice of what format we want to create the video in. I'm just choosing 4K since this particular resolution camera is quite capable of rendering 4K time lapse, and clicking Start. So that about wraps it up. All of that work for about 7 seconds worth of time-lapse video. I think it was well worth it. I always enjoy seeing time move at a different rate than we normally perceive it, so that's always cool. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like. Thank you so much for doing that. And if you'd like to subscribe, there'll be more videos coming out shortly. And here's another run at the time lapse. Thank you.